The one where they all turn 30 is the 14th episode of the 7th season of Friends. This is directed by Ben Weiss, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And I think this might be the first time I'm watching this since turning 30. I will be 33 next month, and I have to say it hits a little differently, but not as dramatically as I thought. When I sat down to watch this, I thought, am I going to lose my mind? But actually, it made me feel a little old, but not too bad. It starts off with everybody knocking on Rachel's door of her bedroom. The room is beautifully decorated with balloons and things, absolutely gorgeous. And she comes out, sees them, goes back into her bedroom, and Tag comes out a second later to establish some ground rules on Rachel's behalf. And basically, it's very clear that she's not enthusiastic about turning 30. And she eventually comes out because they said there are presents, and they're all sitting around, and we get a series of flashbacks to their other birthdays. But what I like about this is that these are flashbacks that are new to the episode. They're not flashbacks that we've seen before. And we have Joey's birthday, where Joey's crying about becoming 30 and pleading with God because they had a deal. And then Chandler's birthday, Joey is also crying. And then we get to see Phoebe. She's riding a space hopper and doing all of these different things that she wanted to accomplish by the time she was 30. Ross bought a sports car. And Monica is very drunk. And she has a surprise party, a very formal, elegant surprise party. And she's supposed to come back from work. And apparently the guys took her out to drink for drinks because she was nervous about turning 30. She's very drunk. Chandler tells her to act surprised, and she opens the door, they yell surprise, and she screams, and it's very, very funny. We then spend the rest of the episode going back and forth between present day at Rachel's birthday and some of the flashbacks, and I think they handled this really well. It never felt jarring, it never felt like we were jumping around too much, and certain birthdays got more weight than others, so I will go through what happens, but in general, I really thoroughly enjoyed everything. Phoebe's gets a little bit dramatic, actually, as one of her goals was to make amends with Ursula. So she goes to visit Ursula with the space hopper, and she says happy 30th birthday, and Ursula says, no, we're 31. And she gets the birth certificate. Well, her birth certificate, obviously they're twins. And yeah, it's true. Phoebe is a year older than she thought she was. And it reminded me of Doris Day, because Doris Day was a couple of years older than she thought she was. Because, well, it's not exactly clear why. There's a theory that she maybe lied about her age at one point back in the day in order to get a role. It's just a theory, it's not confirmed. And then she obviously stuck with that age, and after 70 plus years, she kind of forgot her real age. So it made me think of that. But it also made me think, what would I do if I found out I was a year older than I thought I was? I feel like at this age, about to turn 33, I don't think it would be that big of a deal. But if it was like thinking I was about to turn 40, but I was actually 41, it would be quite dramatic. And I think Phoebe, all things considered, handled it pretty well. And we'll come back to Phoebe in a bit. We're then back in present day, and Tag got Rachel a scooter, which was not a present off of the list. And then Chandler is about to give Rachel a card, and she's got gifts and things, and Joey asks why he didn't get presents, multiple presents, to which Chandler replied, for my last birthday, you gave me a hug, which I just thought was adorable. And unfortunately, Chandler was only responsible for the card, and he kind of got a card that made Rachel upset, because it said, happy birthday, Grandma, better to be over the hill than under it, I'm paraphrasing. And Rachel got upset, and Chandler comforted her, saying, it's just a joke, you're not a grandmother. And Rachel said, yes, because to be a grandmother, you have to have children. And she starts to go into detail about her 5-year plan, which seemed initially pretty sensible. She wants to have children within 5 years, but then she starts to think, well, I want to be married for a year, and then I want to plan the wedding for a year and a half. And she realised that in order for this plan to work, she needs to be currently dating the person she's eventually going to have children with. And it just so happens that at that moment, it's quite a funny moment, but Tag and Joey are out in the hallway playing with the scooter. And it's very clear from Rachel's expression that while she clearly enjoys being with Tag, he's not the person she wants to marry and have children with. Which I think is quite interesting, because I feel like at Rachel's age, and maybe she had to turn 30 to realise this, you get to a certain point where dating is no longer just for fun. And that unless you, not necessarily instantly, but unless you quite quickly determine whether or not you could potentially marry this person if you're wanting to get married, as Rachel does, there's no point in continuing dating them just for fun. That's not a rule or anything, but I feel like it is quite common that at certain points, people will realise that they're wasting time dating somebody for fun if their dream is to get married and have children. And I think Rachel realised it at that point. We then go back to Monica. She's very, very drunk. I like how that played out. I thought it was very, very funny. We had some great interactions between Chandler and Jack and Judy as well. That in this scene and also the previous scene at this party, I rather enjoyed that. We then have Phoebe stressing, mentioning things that she wanted to accomplish and she hasn't done them. And it's interesting that just finding out that she's a year older, nothing has changed in her life, really. I mean, she's shortened her life by a year, but nothing has changed with her goals or indeed how much time she's had. Regardless of what the number was, she still had the same amount of time, but suddenly she's starting to panic about things that she hasn't done. And it's all about putting a number on it rather than how she feels, which I thought was interesting. And Joey does this amazing thing. Phoebe had mentioned that she never had the perfect kiss and a couple of other things. And when she leaves Central Perk, Joey goes after her and gives her the perfect kiss. And it's such a sweet moment. It's really lovely, really, really well done. And we're then back in present day. Rachel breaks up with Tag. I feel like we had enough time with that relationship to get to know Tag without it going on for too long. I think Tag could have stuck around for a little bit more, but at the same time, we did get enough of Tag without him feeling like he was becoming the seventh friend. So I think we got a pretty decent amount out of Tag and what he brought to Rachel's life. And then Ross points out that they'll all be 40 soon, which was not a wise thing to say. And we end with Ross in his sports car, and then somebody else who was clearly middle-aged-ish and in a similar position to Ross, buying a sports car to feel youthful. And Ross realises probably wasn't the wisest decision. It's a really interesting episode. I think depending on what side of 30 you're on, you might have a very different response to it. I absolutely remember watching this growing up and thinking, yeah, 30 sounds quite mature. And now that I'm on the other side of 30, I look at that and think, actually, it's not. It's not old at all. And I'm sure I'll feel the same way. At the moment, I don't think 40 sounds that old, but I'm sure that once I get there, I'll think it sounds even more youthful. So we'll see how I feel when we get there. But if you haven't seen this in a while, certainly before you turn 30 and you're now on the other side of 30, give it a watch. I'd love to know what you think of it now, if your opinion has changed, if your perspective has changed. It definitely feels quite different, but ultimately still really thoroughly enjoyable. The one where they all turn 30 is really exemplary in how to handle flashbacks, and ultimately it's an episode that I really thoroughly enjoyed.